Chris, will the Clippers be back here Sunday playing a Game 7?
What?
Your feeling about, your level of confidence that you'll be back here again.
What you think? I'm on the team. What you going to say? Nah, it's over. That's what you want to hear? Yes. Come on, man. You've been doing this long enough. Seriously, right?
You can expand upon that.
No, I don't know. Everybody in here laughing for a reason.
"40 episodes, people. It's episode 40 of Ball Don't Lie. We've been counting down to this moment for a while now. Crazy how far the podcast has come. Hunter Pitcoff here, Matt Szczypiorski. You know the deal. We're going to be covering both NBA and college basketball today. It's March Madness. It's that time of the year. And, Matt, you got to find you a man that can cover both basketball, right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, you're only as good as your as both sports. So got to be able to scout them coming in and got to be able to analyze the NBA as well.
Couldn't have said it better myself, but we're going to start around the association like we always do, give you some NBA talk first. LeBron James quite literally came out of left field with this one and is now a part owner of the Boston Red Sox. He purchased shares of Fenway Sports Group. Him and Maverick Carter, his longtime business partner, are the first two black partners for FSG. Matt, what was your thoughts when you heard this? I know you're a little bit more in tune with baseball than I am, but I had no idea that this was in the works at all.
Neither did I. I mean, it's still pretty cool. It definitely shocked me, though, because I wonder why you picked Boston. Maybe it's just because of the Fenway Sports Group, but Boston's a weird fit because most Bostonians, don't they kind of hate LeBron? And, I don't know. Red Sox fans are kind of, a little bit on the side of the fence of being a little bit more, not that welcoming to other people. So I don't know. It's cool for LeBron, definitely cool for him, but I don't know about the fit. It's kind of weird to me.
Yeah, he also, I believe, invested in Chelsea, I believe, in the Premier League. I forgot which club it was, but I think he made a ton of money off it. I think he invested $5 million and made $50 million off it. So wow. He's a smart businessman. LeBron has always proven that. I guess he sees something with the Boston Red Sox, I guess. It was interesting because he has obviously repped the Cleveland Indians, being from Cleveland and playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He has repped the New York Yankees before, which, of course, is arch rival to Boston. And then, of course, he repped the LA Dodgers when they won the World Series. LeBron's a bit of a bandwagoner, I guess, when it doesn't count as basketball. But I guess now he's going to have to rep the Boston Red Sox because this is, in fact, I guess, his team now.
Yeah, it's also weird because Boston and LA have a pretty serious rivalry, especially, in baseball world. The Red Sox just traded Mookie Betts, the Dodgers, last year, and Bostonians weren't very happy about that. So I'm, again, confused with the fit, but good for LeBron. His reach is reaching farther than I thought it would.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, like you said, Matt, Boston does not have the greatest reputation in terms of the way they treat certain players of certain ethnicities. So perhaps LeBron and Maverick Carter being the first two black partners of FSG, maybe they're trying to change the narrative like they always do. But we'll see. But looking more on the court, CJ McCollum is finally back for the Portland Trailblazers. Scored 10 points on 3 of 11 shooting in 26 minutes in a really good game, 125-124 win over the New Orleans Pelicans. Matt, it seems pretty good for CJ to come back. He was having a phenomenal season before he got hurt.
Yeah, he was. And I think, tough start last night, but it makes sense. It's his first game in 2 months. They threw him in the starting lineup. He played 26 minutes, which is a lot for a guy coming off of 2 months of an injury. I think he'll be fine once he gets his legs back. This kind of performance that he had last night is not something that's going to stick around. I think he'll get back to his ways of putting the ball in the hoop. He just needs to get his legs back under him, I think.
Yeah, the Trailblazers need to be patient with it. They are currently 6th in the Western Conference, 23-16 overall record. So they were playing very well even without CJ McCollum. And that's not to say that McCollum does not have value. He absolutely does. He was having a career best start to the year, averaging 26.7 points per game. We talk about Mike Conley making his first All-Star bid after a long wait. I feel like McCollum's also in that category of a guy who's an All-Star caliber player but hasn't gotten the official nod. It was looking like he was going to get it this year before he got hurt. But looking at Portland, they had an awesome win yesterday. Damian Lillard had a 50-piece again and hit the game clinching free throws to end the game right there. But how deadly do you think Portland could be? Yusuf Nurkic might come back too. and CJ McCollum keep getting healthy, they're gonna probably, ease him into it a little bit. How good could Portland be down the stretch?
Well, Hunter, I think as you like to say, once they get all the bullets back in the chamber, I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Western Conference playoffs. The Western Conference is so deep, and I think pretty much any first round matchup there is going to be a good matchup. Especially if it stays the way it is right now. The 6 seed, the Lakers are a 3 seed, or even if we get like a Blazers Suns matchup in the first round, I think that'd be a great series. I think Portland matches up well with anybody. Obviously, Damian Lillard is as much of a star around the league as anybody else. So I think the Blazers can definitely hold their own, and I think could possibly be a legitimate first round upset. You know what I mean?
I think so too. I think Portland could definitely climb up the standings maybe a little bit. This is a team that has been riddled with injuries all season long, just like they were last year. But they are deep. The guys like Gary Trent were playing great. Ennis Cantor was playing great. So when they get their their second, third best players back, Portland is going to be a problem. I cannot count out this team as they've always shown. But looking at a game that we were actually watching at Champs Monday night, the Tribeca game between the New York Nets and New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, accidentally combined both teams there. Oopsies. The biggest game now, obviously, the Knicks were able to come back in that game. And we were like, wow, the Nets are killing them. And then we looked up, we're like, oh my God, it's like it's an under 10-point game now. But Julius Randle was probably the biggest story of that game. He blew his lid at the end of that game. He was going nuts, got tossed by the refs. Matt, what was your thoughts on seeing that? Do you think Randle went a little too far, or do you think it was justified at this point?
Honestly, I thought it was justified. It certainly seemed like Kyrie Irving hit the ball, therefore making it not a travel when he came back down with the ball to the floor. I've also never seen Julius Randle blow up like that. And, it's tough to get screwed like that, especially when you feel like you were a shot away from obviously tying the game and maybe even winning the game in overtime because they were playing so well in that fourth quarter. And to feel that you got screwed out of even like a shot at the end of the game there because of a ref's call. It definitely stings. And, you love to see a franchise player in Julius Randle for the Knicks there, maybe have a little bit more composure, but I totally understand the way he was frustrated. And back-to-back tough losses now for the Knicks on consecutive nights. So they lost to the Sixers last night as well. And what was a really, really good game defensively for both squads. It's tough to lose back-to-back games like that, especially when both those teams that you played were at the top of the Eastern Conference, and you played them really well.
Yeah, Matt. We always love quoting the great Mark Jackson. He always says it's a make or miss league, but it's also a make or miss call league too. He says that all the time on the broadcast. So yeah, Julius Randle, I think he had a point there. It seems like a lot of these NBA players just flipping out at the refs. Nothing new. I know people like to exaggerate a little bit, but that one was pretty nuts. I was like, dang, Julius was not happy at all. But the Knicks did play the Nets really tough. It almost felt like the Knicks kind of won that game. The Nets barely kind of got by. But yeah, definitely a good way to measure yourself against some of the top teams in the league. Now, looking at another big man, Miles Turner, he might be on the move. There's been no indication that the Pacers are dealing him, but a lot of teams, including the New York Knicks, both teams from LA, Lakers, Clippers, the Charlotte Hornets, and the New Orleans Pelicans are all expressing interest in Turner. Now, Sabonis has really become the main big man on that team. They have other good players as well. Do you think Miles Turner does get dealt here at the deadline?
Well, I think if you're the Pacers, you definitely have to consider it. Considering where you are in the standings, they're kind of slumping there a little bit. I wouldn't say they have to trade him, but if they feel as though they're getting something decent in return, I think they should definitely do it, especially since, as you said, Domantas Sabonis has kind of taken over there as the prime big man in that offense. Miles Turner is a good defensive player. He's always left a little bit to be desired offensively, in my opinion. But I think he'd be a good upgrade for any of those 5 teams that you listed, especially a team like the Clippers. Even the Knicks now because Mitch Robinson's been out. And then obviously Charlotte has a huge need for center. And we've been talking about that ad nauseum for the past couple weeks, it feels like. So I think Miles Turner would fit in better there than he does in Indiana right now. I think if you're the Pacers, you definitely have to explore. But if you're not going to get anything decent in return, I wouldn't say you would be forced to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on. For the Lakers, I wouldn't do this trade. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. They did sign Damian Jones, and he's played pretty well. And, of course, they have Montrezl Harrell, they have Marc Gasol, and then, of course, Anthony Davis is there. So I wouldn't do it if I was the Lakers. I wouldn't want to take on that price tag that Miles Turner does have. The Clippers is interesting because they do have Serge Ibaka, but I think he's a very similar player to Turner. If not, I actually think he might be better. And although Turner is younger. So I don't know if I would make that move either because if you have 2 of the same exact player, I don't really know unless that's what they want. I think the Knicks does make sense, though, a little bit. He fits on their timeline. He's still only 24 years old, man. He's in his 6th season in the NBA, which is wild to think. So he does fit that timeline of the Knicks. He brings them rim protection, but also can stretch it out and shoot the three. A definition of a 3D 5-man today. I believe he's leading the league in blocks still. The Hornets, we have talked about ad nauseum that they do want a big man. I don't know if I love the fit next to LaMelo Ball, but it does, it is what it is. Pelicans makes actually some sense here because I'm not sure they're going to do it just because they do have to sign Lonzo Ball in the offseason. That's looking like more and more likely that they're not going to trade him and they're actually going to give him a contract extension. He has more threes this year than Trae Young does and shooting at a higher percentage. Fun fact there. I think next to Zion Williamson, his ability to protect the rim and, be a floor spacer and Zion's ability to dominate at the basket, I actually think complements their game pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the Pelicans are a good fit. The only thing is they would probably have to make it work, probably include Steven Adams in that deal. And if you're the Pacers, I don't know why you would want Steven Adams because it feels like you're getting the probably a worse version of Miles Turner in that deal. So, and it probably at a heftier price tag. So I don't know why the Pacers would do that. And, if you're going to not include Steven Adams in the deal, then you have Steven Adams and Miles Turner on the same team, which doesn't make a lot of sense at all either.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. The Miles Turner trade talks have been going on for the last couple of years. We'll see if the Pacers pull the trigger. I think they probably would want to, but they probably also want to get some good value back for him. But also looking at the injury report here, Marvin Bagley fractured his hand. He's going to be out for the foreseeable future. John Wall getting surgery on his left knee. He is expected to return this year. But of course, he has been coming back from a lot of severe injuries. So Houston Rockets definitely want to take it easy on John. And Anthony Davis, he's expected to be out for at least 3 more weeks, if not more, with the potential Achilles injury that he is nursing right now. Matt, what do you think about all these injuries? Any of them particularly noticeable to you?
I think I'll touch on Anthony Davis first. I think, if you're the Lakers, you hold him out as long as you deem necessary. Absolutely no reason to rush him back in the regular season. As long as he's back by the end of the regular season so we can get a couple games in before the playoffs, they'll be fine. And I think that timeline definitely fits. I just don't see any reason to rush him back now, especially with the Lakers still at the top of the West. John Wall, I don't know why you would rush him back either. Why would he even come back and even entertain that, especially since the Rockets have lost 17 games in a row. There's no reason for him to play at all the rest of the season, especially if he's getting surgery. And anything, I would probably consider him a prime buyout candidate at the end of the year. And then Marvin Bagley, just Sacramento, it's where careers go to die. Bagley has not done much of anything at all in his career, which really makes it sting considering Luka went the pick right after him. It's just, classic Sacramento Kings or the Browns of the NBA. So maybe they'll turn around eventually, but that's what I think.
Yeah, and Vlade Divac is a Serbian himself. It did not take Luka Doncic. A lot of people were a little confused by that. But yeah, I love me some Marvin Bagley, of course, the Duke roots, but he has not really panned out and has kind of had the injury bug his whole career. But the Lakers playing pretty well without Anthony Davis so far. It seems like that was a team that really needed that break, post All-Star break. Even like Kyle Kuzma and Markieff Morris went out and were like, yeah, we definitely needed this right now. Our team was definitely on the slumps, but they haven't lost since they came back. I believe on a 3-game win streak, and they've won all those games pretty convincingly too. So, if the Lakers are able to, keep it going and then incorporate Anthony Davis back, that's probably their best case scenario.
Absolutely. And I think they were also built a little bit for Davis to miss time because they have a lot of big men. They have Marc Gasol starting there, and then obviously they have Montrezl Harrell off the bench. Fits well there. Kyle Kuzma has been filling in nicely for him. He's done exactly what we called on him to do a couple of weeks ago, where he has been more consistent for the Lakers. So I think the Lakers are built to win while Anthony Davis is out, but they're going to be even better when he goes back.
Yeah, Kyle Kuzma has actually been awesome for the Lakers the last couple of weeks. He has really started to come into his own a little bit and really buy into his role, playing better defense, getting a lot of rebounds. He's been a rebound machine. I believe he's averaging like 19-7 over the last handful of games since he came back post All-Star break. But now, the moment we were all wondering entering the March Madness, that now that we know that Loyola Chicago is a seed, and now that we know that fans will be in the stands in Indianapolis where all the games will be held, is Sister Jean going to make an appearance? And the answer is yes, Matt. Sister Jean will, in fact, be there. Loyola's 101-year-old chaplain. I don't think I said that right. Chaplain. How you say it?
Chaplain.
Chaplain. Yeah, I'm not religious. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I'm not the most religious person, Matt. But no hate to anyone who is. But anyways, though, shout out to Shad and Ryan here for breaking the news here. One of the most legendary tweets I've ever seen. She said, "quote Sister Jean is ready to cut down some nets." I thought that was hilarious. But Sister Jean, was an icon when Loyola made that Final Four run. Matt, how excited are you to see that she's going to be in the stands through non-Loyola?
Honestly, if anything, I'm more concerned for her. Sister Jean, she better hope she doesn't get the cocoa in India. It's going to be a nasty situation.
She must
But
got vaccinated, I imagine. Like,
she better be. But she was definitely fun the first time around. But honestly, I don't think her magic will work this time around. The sequel is never good as the original, Hunter.
yeah, it's pretty hard to strike lightning in a bottle in tournament, especially doing it multiple times. It has been done before, and Loyola actually thinks a better team this year than they were last year. But that run they went in the Final Four was definitely a magical one. But moving on to our next topic here, Matt, we always end the Around the Association with one motto and one motto only: give the people what they want.
Well, Hunter, that would be no team left behind.
That is correct. No team gets left behind here on the podcast. Moving on to our players of the week, Matt, who starts off the list for you here?
Well, I'm going to start off with Damian Lillard. Since hitting a couple half-court shots in the All-Star game, Lillard hasn't slowed down a bit once he started playing real games again. In his first 4 games of the second half, he's averaging nearly 36 points per game, which is ridiculous, including a 50-point masterpiece Tuesday night. That performance is even more incredible considering he only shot the ball 20 times. He brought Portland back from, I believe, a 15 or 17-point deficit late to win the game, hit a clutch free throw to win the game. He has been incredible.
Yeah, I always feel like Damian Lillard post All-Star break is always just such a monster. So this should not be a surprise at all to anybody that he is dominating the way he has. Just proving all the critics wrong, if you will. Although I feel like he at least did make the All-Star game this year, thank God. But should have been a starter, and I still stand by that. Next on my list, a pretty obvious name, Matt, Terrence Ross of the Orlando Magic. Anyways, though, but hear this out. Damian Lillard has been the leading scorer over the last week. Terrence Ross is second. All right, so at least Damian was expected, not Terrence Ross, averaging 31 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds on a really weird shooting percentage here. 52.6% from the field, 61.5% from 3, and 75% from the foul line. That's a little all over the place, Matt, but I like to dig deep in my bag and give Terrence Ross credit. That's some monster numbers right there.
Those definitely are some monster numbers, and I definitely wouldn't expect that from Terrence Ross of all people. He's got a little Tyrese Halliburton in him, a shooting higher from 3-point percentage and field goal percentage. But yeah, my thing is with Terrence Ross here. Have the Magic won any of those games that they played, or they just keep?
I don't think they were 0-4. But I don't think they won all of them either. So
they definitely won all of them.
Come on, they're not a good team.
Yeah. So I might be like, that's what I'm saying. Terrence Ross might be scoring 31 points per game for a reason because nobody else is. So, but credit to him, he's been balling out. Although that free throw percentage is a little bit sus after shooting 62% from 3. But yeah, like you said, a little bit all over the place. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say that Terrence Ross did secure the bag in free agency, I believe this offseason before. So 2 years into his contract, perhaps he's a guy who's trying to get out of Orlando and get traded. So if he ups his value a little bit.
Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando is like the Bermuda Triangle of the NBA. It seems like once you're there, you can't get out. Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic, Jonathan Isaac, these guys just can't seem to go anywhere. Evan Fournier, always weird players on that team. But Matt, who's next on your list here?
Jimmy Butler. He, as well as the Heat, have been on an absolute tear. Miami has won 11 of their last 12, and he's been a huge part of that, obviously. In his 4 games since the All-Star break, Butler has been as consistent as a cold glass of lemonade on a summer's day. He has scored 27, 28, 29, and 28 points in those 4 games, and the Heat have won all 4 of them. The Heat are back in the thick of the Eastern Conference playoff race after being one of the worst teams in the league early on, and I wouldn't want to play them right now.
Matt, I wonder who was calling this before they went on that run. I'm just saying. I knew that they had it in them. Jimmy Butler missed so many games to start the year. I'm like, once he's back and once his team kind of figures it out, they're going to be pretty good. And now I think they're 4th in the Eastern Conference now and even have a chance to climb up the rankings even more if they keep this up. Jimmy Butler, love the analogy first off of the lemonade. That's great. But Jimmy Butler, someone who obviously does put up great numbers, but I feel like his value, it just doesn't always show up in the stat sheet, the leadership, the grit, the hustle, all that stuff. You can't measure it by a number, but it's still very important to the Miami Heat.
Obviously, I mean, we've seen it every year since he's been in the league. Even when he was, his younger days with Chicago, he was the same type of player. He's just gotten better and better every year. He has aged like a fine wine. Not that he's that old, but he is definitely playing really, really well. He's in the prime of his career right now. Miami knew what they were doing when they signed that contract.
Absolutely. And next on my list is going to be a guy who also plays with that same intensity and heart. That's going to be Montrezl Harrell for Los Angeles Lakers. I usually don't have a Laker on my list. I try not to, but he has been really hooping, Matt, averaging 23 points, 5 rebounds, and over a steal, a block per game. And of course, Montrezl Harrell, the reigning sixth man of the year, he's doing this all while coming off the bench. You talk about a guy who needs to really step up with Anthony Davis gone. I feel like Montrezl was the first guy you really thought of because he was the next best big man on the Lakers, and we know what he can do, scoring the ball. And he's a very underrated defensive player. People don't give him the credit. I know he's undersized, but he's a very good defensive player. And the Lakers are winning games. Harrell's been stepping up, and wanted to show him some love here on the pod.
Yeah, that boy is tenacious, man. I mean, everything he does, he just does it with aggression that cannot be matched by anybody on the court. He was the sixth man of the year last year, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's continued to have that role with the Lakers, and he has fit seamlessly. He has been so good for them. And like I said earlier, when with Anthony Davis out, this team was built to win without him in the lineup. And Harrell's pretty much a big reason why that's happening. He's balled out in his absence, and he should continue to come off the bench because that's clearly the role that works best for him.
And he actually said that he likes coming off the bench more. So he embraces his role. He enjoys it. He likes it. And I think if it wasn't for Jordan Clarkson having the year he has, Montrezl could be the front runner for sixth man of the year because he has once again had a great season with the Los Angeles Lakers like he did with the Los Angeles Clippers. And it's crazy to think that they just let him walk away like that. But Matt, who rounds out your list here?
So you put a Laker on your list, so obviously I got to put a Sixer on my list. I got Tobias Harris. I have given this man a lot of hate in my lifetime, pretty much the last 18 months, but he has really upped his game the last 2 months this season. As is tradition when I talk bad about someone on this podcast, he's upset he wasn't an all-star, and he's been playing like it, scoring at least 23 points in 3 of the 4 games he's played since the all-star break. This includes a 30-point outburst Tuesday night against the Knicks, where he carried his sluggish Sixers offense past a great Knicks defense into a 3-point win, a comeback victory, might I add, and Tobias Harris was awesome down the stretch. He's been the Sixers' main go-to guy down the stretch. If it's not Joel Embiid, it's Tobias Harris, and he has been very consistent.
Well, Tobias Harris is going to have to prove that the rest of the season and in the playoffs, most importantly, if the Sixers have a shot at going to the championship this year, because we know what Embiid's going to do. He's a monster, front runner for MVP. But Tobias Harris has to be that second guy, especially on the perimeter, because we know, Matt, Ben Simmons is a great player, but we know his limitations. So Tobias Harris, they're paying him all that money, because he's a really talented player. He's going to have to prove it, and he has been proving it the last couple months. This season, he's probably had arguably the best year of his career.
Yeah, and another thing that Tobias Harris has really improved upon, which has really influenced his game on both ends of the floor, is that his defense has been great, which has affected how good his offense has been, which sounds like a weird comparison, but it's true. Tobias Harris last night held Julius Randle to no points in the final 19 minutes of the game, and he was matched up with him for the entire game. Originally, I thought it was a mismatch, but Tobias Harris played really, really well in defense, got a couple deflections, got a couple steals off of Julius Randle. He's been playing great on defense all year, which is definitely an improvement as to where he was last year or anywhere else in his career.
Absolutely. And Tobias Harris, he's like 6'8", really athletic, strong. He should be able to guard a lot of different positions in the NBA. And so his defense will only help the Sixers be, obviously, of course, a better basketball team. Last but not least on my list can be Danilo Gallinari of the Atlanta Hawks. Ever since they fired Lloyd Pierce, Matt, they have not lost. They are 6-0 since they got rid of Pierce. And Nate McMillan. Yep, Nate McMillan stepped in. It was on there. I was like, oh God, let me think of it. Nate McMillan, there it is. But Danilo Gallinari, someone who missed so many games to start the year, averaging 21 points per game and 5.8 rebounds since this winning streak really started. And here are these shooting numbers, Matt. 57.5% of his field goals, or 53% of his threes, and he has not missed a free throw in the last 7 days. This guy is shooting lights out, one of the hottest players in the NBA, and they're winning games. I thought this was a pretty obvious name to put on here.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing really well. I was shocked to learn that the Hawks have won 6 in a row. I found that out last night. I was like, what? Because especially since, obviously, as is tradition, as soon as we start talking bad about a team, they start going off again. He has played really, really well. The Hawks have started to play really well once Nate McMillan got in there. Maybe that's all they need was just a little bit of a culture change, and they have really turned it around.
They really have. The Atlanta Hawks have responded well to McMillan. I don't want to drag on Lloyd Pierce too much, but I guess his firing kind of ignited something within this Atlanta Hawks team, and McMillan has them bought in right now. But we're going to transition to another team, the Dallas Mavericks, who also start off the season not as well as people thought, including myself. I'll admit I was a little higher on Dallas than a lot of other people, but they have won 11 of their last 15 games, Matt. They now sit at 20 and 18, eighth seed in the West after being on the outside of even the play-in tournament just a couple weeks ago. What have you seen from this Dallas Mavericks team? How have they been able to figure it out?
Well, Luka's just been otherworldly this entire year. Kristaps has come back. He's really gotten his legs back under him. I think it's been a big difference. They've also played a lot better defense than they did earlier in the year. Rick Carlos kind of figured out that rotation a little bit. Their bench is playing really well. Still, their starters have been really disappointing, though. Josh Richardson has been really disappointing all year. Finney Smith has been disappointing. Kleber has not been awesome all year. They've been one of those teams that's been really inconsistent all year, but they've started to figure out recently. I think it's mostly because of their star power on their bench.
Yeah, a big reason why, Matt, Luka Doncic has been balling like he is. I think at this point he's established himself as a superstar player in the NBA. But, every Batman needs a Robin. And Kristaps Porzingis, it took him a little bit to come back from the injury, but over the last 10 games they've played, averaging 22.5 points per game, a little over 8 rebounds, a little over a block, shooting 54 from the field, 44 from 3, and 83% from the foul line. Now, this is great shooting numbers for anyone. But let's not forget that Kristaps Porzingis is 7-3, and he's doing this and is an extremely talented player. Do you think he's kind of the difference maker on this team?
Well, I'll say yes, and I'll also say no, and here's why. Yes, because obviously he adds a significant dynamic to this team. As you said, it's hard to guard a guy who is 7'3" and who shoots 45% from 3. That's ridiculous. But the reason I may say no is because I think the role players may even be more important in terms of how high this team can go. You know what you're going to get from Luka, and you know what you're going to get from Porzingis when he's healthy. However, there's no telling what kind of production that you're going to get from the supporting cast of this team night in and night out because they're so wildly inconsistent. As I said, Richardson has been an absolute flop of an acquisition. We thought they fit in well there when he was acquired of the offseason. Kleber has played too many minutes, in my opinion. Rick Carlisle should probably move Tim Hardaway back into the starting lineup for better shooting around Luka and just put Jay Rich on the bench because he has just not gotten it done.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on what you said, Matt, and say yes. I think Porzingis is the difference maker because, of course, Luka's the best player, and we know what he's going to do. Like, he is box office for a reason. But I feel like when this is a star-driven league, and if your star players aren't playing well or they're not playing, you're not winning games. We saw that with the Clippers in the playoffs, and we saw even a team like Denver in the playoffs. It works both ways. Dallas, when they had Porzingis on the court in the bubble, this was a completely different team. This is a team that took the Clippers to a hard 6 games. And if I'm being honest, I think they could have beat them if Porzingis was healthy. They definitely had a shot at it. And they didn't get thrown out of that game 1, which was absolutely ridiculous. Porzingis is such a talented player. Injuries have always been the biggest concern with him his entire career because a guy at that size and his skill set we have never really seen before. But, he is a very unique player in his own right. I feel like if Porzingis is playing at that all-star caliber level next to Luka Doncic, is much easier to find role players and guys who can do what they can do than it is to find a Kristaps Porzingis.
Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis, his nickname is the unicorn for a reason. He's special, man. I mean, just to be that tall and be that athletic is incredible. Obviously, he fits well next to Luka as a big man who can score from pretty much anywhere on the court. But the reason I just say that the role players are just so important because any team can have 2 great players and make it to the playoffs and, maybe even win a series. But if you want to win a championship, your role players have to step up. And the Mavericks just don't have that right now. Their supporting cast is just not good. If they want to compete for a championship and Luka wants to stay in Dallas and compete for a championship, they need to get role players that can help out this team because you saw with the Lakers last year and pretty much any other team that you could list down the road of any team in the past 50 years that's won a championship, they have great depth. And they have players all around the court that can do it. Even Danny Green, as much as he struggled in the playoffs, he was great in the regular season for the Lakers last year. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope went off in the bubble last year for the Lakers. They need role players that can help out.
Yeah, you're definitely right. This is not a complete basketball team at all just yet. So do you think Dallas is going to be aggressive at the deadline? You think they're going to try to get some guys to, even keep building on their current success right now?
I think they should be aggressive in trying to acquire a consistent shooter, maybe a 3-point shooter, like maybe even JJ Redick, even though he sucks at defense, which doesn't really help them that much. An interesting name that I thought of, though, that they could even try to make a run at is Buddy Hield. I think he'd be a great fit as a wing there. Obviously, he's not a European white guy, so that'd be, an interesting fit. But I think Buddy Hield would fit really well next to Luka.
That's a great name to bring up because it sounds like someone like Bradley Beal and Zach LaVine, they're not going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy Hield, maybe if they're willing to give the Kings quite literally a King's ransom for him, then I think Buddy Hield would be an awesome fit there. I think he, like we've talked about, could be a great fit anywhere, like you always talk about with the Sixers. So, yeah, I think Buddy Hield can make a lot of sense. Again, it's not too hard to find some of these wings. They definitely need some defense, but they need some pop too in that starting lineup. Because Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, and even Josh Richardson now at this point, they are not shot creators. They are people that basically Luka Doncic sets up to score, which is great. But I think they need more bucket getters. They have them on the bench like Tim Hardaway Jr. Jalen Brunson's had a fantastic season, but they definitely could use more of those guys. It is not a bad thing to have multiple players who can put the ball in the basket.
Absolutely not. And, even if they went ahead and got, a center, maybe like a defensive prowess kind of center, and maybe move Porzingis to the 4, take Kleber out of the starting lineup. Porzingis has played the 4 before. I think he played the 4 for the Knicks for a while. So I think he could definitely play the 4 there as well. Maybe get like an Andre Drummond type if they buy him out. I definitely wouldn't trade for Drummond, but I would maybe acquire him via buyout. I think they'd be a good fit for the Mavs, honestly.
Yeah, and there's been some rumors that Drummond could be looking at Dallas if he does get bought out. So that definitely would be a great fit, Matt. I'm glad you brought that up. But looking at Dallas currently, maybe they do make some moves. But how do you think the rest of their season plays out? Is this a playoff team? They do make the playoffs? Is this a team that can maybe cause some noise in the playoffs? What do you think?
I see them as a 7 seed, which is exactly what they were a season ago. I think they can certainly be a competitive team no matter who they play in the first round of the playoffs, because I think they'll definitely get by the play-in tournament. I think they'll get by there easily. I just think they're a competitive team no matter who they play in the first round of the playoffs, just because of their star power. Luka and Porzingis, that they're gonna show out like they did last year in the playoffs. But much like last year, they just won't have enough depth and help from their role players to win a series, I don't think.
For me, it depends on who they play. I don't see them being at any of the LA teams. I don't think they'd beat Utah. Any other team, though, I think they'd have a shot against. So it depends how the seedings work out, the matchups play out. If the Dallas Mavericks can make any noise, they did last season. They kind of struck lightning in a bottle. But I do tend to agree with you. This was a team that I predicted to be the 2 seed entering this year. I thought they were going to have a phenomenal year. I will admit I was fairly wrong on Dallas, but they're playing like it the last 15 games at least. So there's that. But yeah, I think I tend to agree. I think Dallas is currently probably a team. I think they'll definitely make the playoffs, and I think they'll make it tough on whoever they play.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a very similar situation to what they did last year against the Clippers, where it's maybe a hard-fought 6 or 7 game series, but ultimately they don't pull it out.
Yeah, let's see if they're able to maybe, pull off an upset or two, have a Cinderella story, just like we see all the time in March Madness. Me and Matt both filled out our brackets here. We're basically just going to go probably by region, talk about some of the big upsets we might have, who we got going to the Final Four, all that stuff. Matt, I guess let's start maybe with the South region. I mean, actually, I'll let you pick the region. What do you want to start off with?
I was just going to start at the top. I'm going to go left to right here. So I'm going to start with the Gonzaga region because nobody else is winning that region other than Gonzaga. They're going to sweep through that region. It's the easiest region they could have gotten. I think Virginia coming in, they're not coming into Indianapolis till Friday. I think they play either Friday or Saturday. I'm not sure, but they're playing a scrappy Ohio team. Their point guard, I think he's probably Ohio's best player. I think he could be the best player on the floor. Even the Creighton UC Santa Barbara matchup is a tough matchup for Creighton. Creighton coming off a disastrous loss against Georgetown in the Big East final. I think that's an upset possibility there. Also the playing game in this region, Wichita State and Drake, the 11 matchup. Both those teams are not very good. Drake was kind of phenomenal in the beginning of the year because they were, like 15-0 against the spread to start the year for betting people. Not that I bet. But USC, I think, will beat either of those teams. I just don't think Wichita State is that good either. But a team to keep an eye on here, Hunter, I think is Oregon. Oregon, they are 11-3 when they have their starting 5 in the lineup, which they haven't had pretty much all year. And they have played really, really well. They got a key player back. I can't forget who it is. I can't remember who it is, but they got a key player back. I think they I have them upsetting Iowa in the round of 32. I think Iowa's a really good team, but I think Oregon's coming together at the right time. I have Gonzaga winning this region, though. I think Oregon can make a tough game against Kansas in the Sweet 16, but I think no matter what, either of those teams is going to lose in the Elite Eight to Gonzaga, and Gonzaga is going to the Final Four in this region.
All right, so our west side is basically identical. So there's that. I have Gonzaga making it to the Final Four. I got Oklahoma beating Missouri. I think Oklahoma struggled late down the stretch, but this is a very good basketball team and one that definitely could be higher than an 8. And I think Missouri has been the complete opposite. They are on the downward trend completely. Yeah. I don't think they're a good team at all. So I'm going to go Oklahoma there, but that's it. They will not beat Gonzaga. Creighton and Santa Barbara is an interesting one. I think Creighton, they did not show out well. Or I mean, they went to the Big East Finals, but I think Creighton is actually a very good 5 seed. There is, I think, some 12s that could pull off the upset here. I just don't think it's going to be this one. I do have Creighton advancing to the next round. I have Ohio 100% against Virginia for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. Ohio's a really good basketball team. This is a good 13 seed, and there's always going to be an upset or two in there. I feel like the 5-12 is kind of like now the old upset kind of, and now the 4-13 is kind of the hip upset that you want to pick. So I'm going to have Virginia losing there. I actually think that Wichita State could beat USC. And so right now, depending on how that game turns out, I might change it. But I do have Wichita State advancing against USC because USC is a very young team. Evan Mobley is probably going to be a top 3 pick, and they have some other really talented players there too. But I do think that they are vulnerable. They're one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country, and they don't finish games very well. So if this is a close game, I'm not quite sure. Wichita State did beat Houston recently. So this is a team that can beat some top teams, and they had the top overall record in the AAC this year. Kansas is going to win. Oregon, I am 100% on you. I have them beating Iowa too. I think Iowa is a team that could go to the Final Four. Or they can lose in the first weekend. I have them losing in the first weekend. It's not a good matchup. Oregon is always great in the tournament, and I do have them advancing along with Kansas, Creighton, and Gonzaga to the Sweet 16. That Oregon-Kansas one can go either way, but Kansas is a really good team. And a team that, let's not forget, got absolutely pounced the first week of the season against Gonzaga. I think they could make it really tough on them, but I do think Gonzaga is the better team. I'm going to go with a team that is quite literally not lost a game this year and is dominant, and I do agree that's who I have in the Final Four out of the West as well.
Yeah, I think we're both pretty sold on Gonzaga. I don't think this region, like I said, it's soft like butter.
It's not great.
Yeah, and the top 4 teams in this region, it's worth mentioning, Gonzaga has already beaten this year. They beat Iowa in December. They've beaten Kansas already this year, and they beat Virginia already this year. So I think, as they should, they're the top seed in the overall tournament. But they've got kind of a cakewalk to the Final Four, in my opinion, barring a huge upset.
Yeah, I guess understandably so. They were the best team in the country this year, and I am sick and tired of people saying, "Oh, Gonzaga doesn't play anymore." I'm like, no kidding. They play in the WCC. We know this, but they schedule all these great teams before and beat them. So I don't know what you're complaining about. But yeah, Matt, I guess take us to the next region here.
So I'm going to go to the East, which is the one that has Michigan as the top seed in that region. So I have Michigan obviously advancing. I have LSU over St. Bonaventure. Not to say that St. Bonaventure can't win. I like the Bonnies. They're a good team. They're just won the A10 tournament. They're a very good team. Colorado, Georgetown. See, you said the hit pick is a 12 seed. Or it used to be like that. Georgetown, I just don't think they're a good team, man. I think they kind of lucked into a Big East tournament win there. Obviously, they beat the doors off Creighton, but they played a Villanova team that was not a full strength. Seton Hall has not been good all year. I don't like Georgetown at all. I think Colorado matches up with them pretty well. They've got good guard depth there in Colorado. Florida State, I have them over UNC Greensboro. I think they're a very talented team. Michigan State, UCLA. I think Michigan State beats the doors off of UCLA. UCLA is trending in the downward direction. They've lost 4 in a row. Michigan State's a great team. And Todd Izzo in March. I'm not going to bet against that. Now, BYU, Michigan State. That's an interesting matchup for the first round. I'm going to ride my Mormon white boys because I like BYU. They shoot the ball really well. They gave Gonzaga their best run. They almost upset them in that WCC final there. I like BYU advancing. Texas, they might be the most confusing team in all of college. I think like you said about Iowa, I think they have potential to get to the Final Four and also lose in the first weekend. I think we can go either way for them. UConn, I have them over Maryland. I think they're just a better team. Obviously, I have Bama over Iona. Not to knock on Rick Pitino, though. He's been there before. I think he'll coach Iona up pretty well. I think, if anything, they'll cover the spread. Now, I was debating the Michigan-LSU game for a while. I was thinking LSU over Michigan, but at the end of the day, I ended up picking Michigan. I think it's a safer pick, but I could flip-flop on that one. I have Florida State beating Colorado. Against my best wishes, I have Texas over BYU. And then my upset in this region, I have UConn going to the Sweet 16 against over Alabama. I don't think Alabama is very good. You talked about it in your PSSN segment a couple of weeks ago. Alabama does not play good defense. They've been playing well recently, but I don't like Alabama. I think they're a fraud of a team in the top and the 2 seed there. And then I have Florida State upsetting Michigan. I think Michigan not having Livers for this tournament is going to come back to bite them. Michigan has also been trending downward the last couple of weeks, so I'm not really entirely sold on them. I think Florida State is a well-rounded team that can win there. And I have Texas beating UConn. And then in the Elite Eight, I have Texas over Florida State against my best wishes. I want Texas to, I have Texas in my Final Four, but I'm very confused on them. They've got great depth all around, though. They have good scoring, and they're getting hot at the right time. And most importantly, they have Shaka Smart as their head coach, who has been here before with VCU. He knows what it's like to win in March. I like Texas.
Yeah, once again, I also have Texas making it out of this region as well. We are 2 for 2 there. But we do have some disagreements here. I actually have LSU beating Michigan in the second round. I went with it. I don't. This Michigan team is in a downward direction. They have not looked nearly as good. A team that's built on defense, and they're playing a phenomenal offensive team in LSU, and they probably just lost their best defensive player in Isaiah Livers. Now, I'm not saying that they can't make a run without Livers. They are a deep team. They have good guys, but LSU matches up pretty well. And while they did lose to Alabama, they looked really freaking good against them.
They did.
I think LSU is actually going to pull that one off. I do have Georgetown over Colorado. I don't think Colorado is very good, and Georgetown has hit lightning in a bottle, but I do have them losing to Florida State in the next round. But I do think this will be the 12-5. I may have one more. I don't remember. But I think if there is one, I think this is it, because I just don't really believe in Colorado all that much. If Michigan State wins, I think they will actually beat BYU, but I think BYU beats UCLA. Just because I think Michigan State, like you said, it's March. This is a weird team. I do feel like they play better against good teams than they do against bad teams. So they kind of play that competition. I think BYU is a good team. I think people are maybe sliding that one in too much and not giving BYU the credit they deserve. But I think Michigan State beats them. UCLA doesn't. So might have to change my bracket depending on that game. UConn I had beating Maryland. I don't think that one's actually going to be close. I think they're going to kill them. Maryland's not that good. But I had Bama beating UConn. I think they're kind of similar teams. And I think Alabama, while I did, kind of get on them, I do have them advancing into the second weekend, but losing to Texas. I have Florida State beating LSU, and then Texas, the Longhorns, horns up, going to the Final Four. I think Texas, watching the Big 12 tournament, they have looked freaking awesome. They had a huge COVID pause, which I think affected their team a lot. They are big and athletic up front, but have really good guard play. Matt Coleman is an awesome two-way guard. I think he's going to be one of the stars in this tournament. Andrew Jones, the amazing story, had leukemia and now is becoming a great player once again for Texas. And having Kai Jones, who might be a lottery pick, Greg Brown there, and then Jericho Sims playing phenomenal too recently. There's a lot of good players on Texas, really well coached teams. Shaka Smart quite literally was coaching for his job this year and then rose up to the occasion. Maybe it's a new piece on his head. I'm not quite sure. But I think Texas, this is a team that I really like them entering the tournament, and I have them in my Final Four, and I like them all season, honestly.
Yeah, Jericho Sims is a good name to bring up because I've heard a comparison where he started to play well here down the stretch in the Big 12 tournament. And if he has a similar run here in the NCAA tournament where he continues to play this well, and a comparison I've heard brought up is Jordan Bell from Oregon when Oregon went on their Final Four run a couple of years ago, where Jordan Bell launched his draft stock. I think a similar thing could happen to Jericho Sims if Texas makes a deep run. But I think the wild card in this region is Alabama. We're very torn on them. It's weird to say about a 2 seed for them to be a wild card, but honestly, this team could go either way. They could lose first weekend or they could end up in the Final Four. They have a lot of talent, that's for sure. And if they get hot at the right time, they're one of the best teams in the country. But I think UConn is a nightmare matchup for them in the second round.
Yeah, UConn, James Bouknight is an absolute monster. Dude, he is a first round pick lock, can really score the ball. But Alabama, they did give me some confidence in the SEC tournament. They did look really good, and that was enough for me to convince myself to put them at least in the Sweet 16, where I do have them losing to Texas. This is one of the biggest hit or miss teams, but they are playing great basketball right now, and I think that does matter. I almost think Michigan could also be the bit of the weird team here because you weren't so sure about picking them against LSU. I did, in fact, pick LSU, and they're not playing great right now, but they are the 1 seed. And what's that? This is a very good team. But I do think, if I'm being honest, it's never all chalk. There's always some upset in there. And I think LSU, the way they're playing recently and the amount of scores they have, I think that's where the upset's going to happen.
Yeah, Hunter, and that's a good point to bring up because no year ever has all 1 seeds made the Final Four, and one of them's got to lose eventually. I think Michigan is the top candidate of all the 1 seeds to lose. But yeah, let's move on to the South region here, the Baylor region. So I have Baylor winning the first round against Hartford, obviously. I have North Carolina against Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is one of the worst teams in this tournament. They're not very good. They can't
Penn
shoot.
State killed them.
They're not good. They let Penn State come back in that game in the Big Ten. They lost that
Yeah.
game. Villanova Winthrop. This is the one where everybody's on Winthrop. And for that reason alone, I'm picking Villanova because Villanova, they lost 2 of their top 3 scorers, obviously. But Jay Wright in March has really flipped his script a little bit. Before 2016, if you remember, his thing was that he couldn't win in March. And now he has that reputation of being a great March coach. I don't know if they'll win. Honestly, that game's kind of up in the air for me. But just because everybody's going Winthrop makes me want to go Villanova. So I'm going Villanova just out of spite. I have Purdue over North Texas. I think Purdue is hitting their stride at the right time. They played well in the Big Ten tournament. I have Texas Tech over Utah State because I love Chris Beard, love the Red Raiders. Arkansas over Colgate. It's an interesting game because it's the first time in a while that anybody from Arkansas has gotten that close to any kind of dental product. So but Colgate, they've only played 15 games all year. And here's an interesting stat to bring up about Colgate, Hunter, when I was listening to a podcast this morning, is that Colgate has played 5 teams the entire year. They played Army and Navy 4 times each, and they played another team 4 times each as well. So they really haven't played anybody. They've played 5 teams all year. So I think because of that, I don't like them against Arkansas, even though they do have a good team. I have Florida over Virginia Tech because I'm not sold on the ACC at all this year. Quite honestly, I don't like Virginia Tech that much. And I have Ohio State, obviously, against Oral Roberts, although Oral Roberts, I think, is another one of those lower seeds that is really, really good, very underrated. I think they'll keep it close to Ohio State, but I think Ohio State wins. Now this is another 1-8 matchup. I'm kind of flopping between because North Carolina's hitting their stride at the right time, but I actually pulled the trigger on this upset. I have North Carolina over Baylor. Baylor's trending down at the wrong time. They're coming off Are they coming off a COVID pause?
A little bit, yeah. They had one a couple weeks back. They were gone for like almost a month or 3 weeks.
I was trying to remember if they got kicked out of the Big 12 tournament or that was somebody else. I think it was Kansas.
That was Kansas.
Yeah, so I don't like Baylor. I like North Carolina in that game. They've got the experience. They got Roy Williams, obviously. I got Purdue over Villanova. I think that's a wash. I think they're destroying there. I have Texas Tech over Arkansas. Like I said, Chris Beard in March is a great guy to bet on. I like Texas Tech a lot. I have Ohio State beating Florida. And then in the Sweet 16, I have Purdue over North Carolina and Ohio State over Texas Tech. Ohio State, Texas Tech is an interesting game for me because it's an interesting matchup. Chris Beard has got the experience, obviously. Took Texas Tech to the national championship in 2019. But I think Ohio State's got way too much talent. And I think they're a good team. They have good depth. They have a great big man, and they've got good guards. And I have Ohio State beating Purdue in the Elite Eight, a matchup of their semifinal matchup in the Big Ten tournament. I think Ohio State gets to the Final Four there.
We are 3 for 3 on Final Four picks.
Whoa!
I do have some more. I have a lot more disagreements though with you.
Wow.
So there's that. I have Baylor, UNC. I think Winthrop's beating Villanova. I'm sorry. The points you make are valid, but Villanova has not played good basketball recently. Not having Colin Gillespie there is huge. And while you're right, I'm sure Jay Wright's gonna prepare these guys. Winthrop's a team that made it. Was probably gonna. They did make it last year because they did win their conference tournament, so they would have been in. But then got that opportunity taken away. Winthrop has had a phenomenal season. I forgot exactly what their record is, but they're a really good team, and I think that's
they're 23-1. They've only lost 1 game all year.
They've only lost one. I thought it was something like that. I think Winthrop's beating them. I'm sorry. The only other disagreement I have in the first round, I have Virginia Tech over Florida. While you said the ACC sucks, so does the SEC. They're not very good either. Virginia Tech was in the top 25. I think I'm not sure they were the final rankings, but they were the rankings before. They've beaten some pretty good teams, and I think Virginia Tech advances. I had Baylor over UNC. UNC, I think, is a year away from being a great team. I don't think it's this year. They have played well recently, but let's not forget they've also lost to Marquette too. And I think the Baylor slander is getting a little ridiculous. I know they had some tough games, but the Big 12 is really good. They versed a very hot Oklahoma State team and lost to them. That's completely fine. They also beat them earlier that week too. So I think Baylor is still a fantastic team, and I think they're going to beat UNC. Purdue is definitely going to beat Winthrop. I don't think they strike lightning in a bottle twice. I've said it 3 times on this podcast, but that's okay. Arkansas, Texas could really go either way. I am leaning toward Texas Tech because of that experience. Like you said, they just seem to play awesome in March, and that defense is really good. And I think they have enough offense there to beat Arkansas. But I wouldn't be shocked. That one could go either way. And then I got Ohio State over Virginia Tech. That one's kind of a wash. Baylor, I have beating Purdue, which is different for you because you have UNC there. But I think the Baylor Bears do beat Purdue. I also have Ohio State over Texas Tech, although I was tempted. I think Ohio State's the better team, and then I have them beating Baylor in advancing to the Final Four. I also think Baylor, like, this is a team that had high expectations entering the season, and so I think because of that mentality and they have that championship mentality, like, this is a team that is in the tournament like we're trying to win. Not every team can honestly say that. So I think because of that, they'll beat some of these top teams, but I do eventually also have Ohio State beating them because their mentality is also the same. And I think this is, like we said, it's all about picking, the hot teams. And I think Ohio State winning the Big Ten tournament did show everyone that they are for real.
Yeah, Ohio State's such a weird team too, man.
They are weird. These two seeds, I don't feel comfortable in at all.
Yeah, because
none of them.
The thing with Ohio State is they can either come back from down 15 and win the game, or they can have a 15-point lead and blow it. And that's exactly what they did in their final two games of the Big Ten tournament. They had a 15 or so point lead against Michigan, let them all the way back in the game, ended up winning that game by 1. And then against Illinois, they were down 15 very early and came all the way back, sent that game into overtime, ended up losing, but it was a very, very good game. I think Ohio State is a very talented team. If they have any kind of consistency in this tournament, they're going to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't trust any of these two seeds at all. They scare, every single one scares me, yet I have one in the Final Four. So I guess moving on to the Midwest, Matt, Illinois is the number 1 ranked team there. How do you think this region plays out?
All right, hopefully we don't go 4-4 here, but I have a feeling we might. Illinois, I have over Drexel. I think they're the most, I think they're the hottest team coming in this tournament. I have
sure about that? No,
what do you say?
Are you sure about that? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I got
Drexel can pull it off. Hometown team.
I've got the Sister Jeans over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had a nice run in the ACC tournament, but that was kind of aided by Virginia having to get out of the tournament because of COVID. Tennessee, Oregon State. This is a tough one for me because Oregon State is hot right now, and Tennessee's been kind of up and down all year, but I do have Tennessee winning that game. I think they're just a better team than Oregon State. I have Oklahoma State kicking the doors off Liberty. I have San Diego State over Syracuse. This could be a tough game too, because Syracuse, their zone every year in the tournament wreaks havoc on some of these teams that don't play in the ACC. Syracuse is a good team, obviously coached well by Jim Boeheim. Buddy Boeheim is a good player as well for them. Isn't it weird that Buddy Boeheim is in college and Jim Boeheim's like 76 years old and it's kind of weird. Anyway,
let's get past that.
I do have San Diego State win that game because I think they're a very complete team offensively and defensively. They're one of the few teams that is shooting over 70% from the floor as a team and holding teams under 60% from the floor. I believe that stat is. I could be wrong on that. Don't look me up on that. I have West Virginia over Morehead State. I have Rutgers over Clemson because Clemson is booty cheeks this year. I don't like them at all. And then I have Houston over Cleveland State. In the next round, I have Illinois beating Sister Jean. Sorry, sister. Sorry, Chaplin. I have Oklahoma State over Tennessee. I think that's not a close one either. I think Cade Cunningham is really going to come into his own in this tournament. West Virginia, San Diego State. I'm torn on this one because, as I said, San Diego State has the stats to back it up, but West Virginia has something they haven't had in a couple of years, and that's a good shooting team, which usually isn't the case for Bob Huggins. He usually has to pressure teams into giving him wins. They play good defense always, but this is a team that isn't necessarily the West Virginia defense you think of, but they have good shooters now. So I'm tempted to take San Diego State, but I think I'm going to take West Virginia there. Then I have a big upset in the next round. I have Rutgers over Houston. Houston, I'm not sold on at all. They have 2 horrible losses this year. They lost to East Carolina as an 18-point favorite. They lost that game. They also lost to Tulsa. I am not sold on Houston at all. Yes, they are 24-3, but they are the kind of 24-3 that people thought of as Gonzaga 15 years ago, where they play in a bad conference, a basketball conference is not good at all, and they beat up on them. And I just don't think Houston is a very good team. I also have them in the losing to Rutgers. I have Illinois beating Oklahoma State in a thriller. I think Cade Cunningham will go off in that game as well, but I think Illinois has enough star power to combat that. And then I have West Virginia over Rutgers because I think the Rutgers miracle run ends there. And then in the Elite Eight, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini beating the doors off West Virginia. I think Illinois is the most complete team in this tournament. I think they're the hottest team in this tournament. I think they don't have any problems with teams that aren't in the Big Ten.
Yeah, we definitely have a little more disagreements here. I have Georgia Tech over Loyola. I think this is a hot team right now. They're a very, very good team. They're scrappy. Jose Alvarado, Moses Wright. They got some really good players there. And while the ACC is definitely not great this year, that's actually one of the few ACC teams I'm actually high on in this tournament. I don't even know. I think outside of Florida State and UNC, I don't even think I have any of them even advancing past the first round. Um, yeah, Oregon State, I don't think is a good team. I think they just thrived in an awful Pac-12. And I don't like Tennessee either. This is the worst 5-12 matchup to predict. But Tennessee's a better basketball team. They have more talent, and it looked pretty solid in the SEC tournament. So I am going to have to go with the Vols here. I think Liberty's a good team, but I think Oklahoma State's probably going to win that one. San Diego State over Syracuse. I'm 100% confident in that one, to be completely honest. I don't think Syracuse is very good. I think that they're a team that maybe shouldn't even be in the tournament, if I'm being honest. San Diego State is a team that quite literally got taken away from them last year. They were a legit national championship contender. Not as good this year, no Malachi Flynn, but still a great team, and I think that they'll advance. I have Clemson over Rutgers. I don't think Rutgers is very good either, to be honest. This is probably one of the worst 7-10 matchups. I know you have them in your Sweet 16, but I don't really like either of these teams, but I think I'm going to go Clemson for matchup reasons. And then Houston, I have over Cleveland State. Difference is I have Houston in my Elite Eight. I don't feel great about it, but based on these matchups here, I have Oklahoma State winning, Illinois winning, and then San Diego State, West Virginia is really close, but I think West Virginia is a better team. And then next round, I have Illinois over Oklahoma State. I think, like you said, Oklahoma State's hot, but Illinois is hotter. And then Houston over West Virginia. They have a very good team, a team that has slowly improved every single time they're in the tournament. And I think they'll go the Elite Eight, but I think they'll probably get smoked by Illinois. And then that leads us to a 4-for-4 Final Four. We'll see if it goes that way. I guess I could say that I generally agree with your bracket.
Yeah, it's always crazy, predicting the tournament for the first couple rounds. Then you get to the Final Four, and it seems like you have the same one as everybody else. I just know who the best teams are in this tournament. Texas, I think, is a wild card. Ohio State's a wild card. But as far as the one seeds go in this Final Four for both of us, I think Illinois and Gonzaga are the two far and away best teams in this tournament right now. And that I have them both in the national championship. And then my national champion, I'm flip-flopping on it. But right now I'm sticking with Illinois because I like them a lot. Cockburn is awesome. I think they give Gonzaga matchup nightmares. But I will say I'm flip-flopping on this because Gonzaga, 4 of their 5 starters are up for Player of the Year awards for their position. They're one of the best. Gonzaga is one of the best all-around teams in the history of the sport. I think Gonzaga is a very good team, but I think Gonzaga just has a reputation of choking when it matters most, and I think that continues here. I think Illinois is a national champion.
Yep, that's exactly what I have too, Matt. So, yeah, Kofi Cockburn they match up awesome with Gonzaga. Illinois is the hottest team, I think, in the country right now. Again, love me some Gonzaga. I have been in the national championship, but Illinois is a 1 seed too now, and in a very battle-tested Big Ten. Ayo Dosunmu, got to give him heart. Had a pretty brutal injury against Michigan State. Now he's wearing that big old mask on his face. But yeah, this is a complete team. They have guards really well coached by Underwood there. That is who I have as my national champion right now. It would actually be the first Big Ten champion since Michigan State, the Flintstones, did it in 2000, which is crazy to think. They've had teams go to the Final Four, need a national champion, but they have not been able to actually take home the crown in the Big Ten over 20 years.
Yeah, the Big Ten has been one of those, conferences that just beats up on each other all the time. And then by the time they get to the Final Four, the national championship, they just don't have enough left in the tank. And they've not to say they've had some really good, haven't had some really good teams because they've had some awesome teams, like you said, Hunter, but they just have not gotten it done. I think this year is the year that changes. They're going to have I think they have at least 2 teams in the Final Four in Illinois and Ohio State. Maybe Iowa gets there. Maybe we're wrong about them. Maybe we're wrong about Michigan as well. But they have some really, really solid teams in this bracket. I think at least 1 team from the Big Ten gets there. I think it's probably a solid bet that even 2 teams from the Big Ten get there, at least. So we'll see.
Yep, I definitely agree with you there. I think that Illinois could be the team to do it this year. There could be some other ones also. And yeah, I mean, some of those Michigan State teams ever since 2000 have made the Final Four. Ohio State had those teams with Jared Solinger there. Michigan's had a couple runs at the Final Four. Even Wisconsin back-to-back years with Frank Kaminsky there. So they've had shots. They just haven't been able to execute it. But based on my bracket, I'm gonna say that this is the year they finally do it. But next but not least, our All NBA team, or I should say All March Madness team this year, is gonna be All March Madness moments. Shout out to Matt for coming up with this one. Basically, we're just gonna give some of our favorite moments that we've seen in the tournament. Matt, I'll let you go first here. What was one of your favorite moments from
I'm going to
all
start with
time?
the one. I'm going to start with the one that's probably the most obvious. Being a Philly guy myself, the Villanova UNC championship from 2016, one of the greatest NCAA games of all time and one of the best championship games of any sport, definitely collegiate wise. This game was so close throughout the entire game and had one of the most wild final 10 seconds of any game I've ever seen in any sport. Marcus Page hit an incredible double clutch 3-point shot that Bill Raftery labeled as onions, a double order to tie the game with 4.7 seconds left. Then after a timeout, Nova's point guard Ryan Arcidiacono, now a part of the Chicago Bulls, raced up the court like he was going to shoot it before dishing it behind him to the trailer. Chris Jenkins, who nailed a three at the buzzer, and the rest is history.
Yep, that also made my list. I think that's one of those moments where, like, you know where you were when you watched that game. As a Villanova fan yourself and as a Duke fan myself, we both won this scenario. I saw UNC fans cry and Villanova fans went wild. So it seems like we both made out of that pretty well. No complaints here.
Yeah, and that's just one of the, like you said, this is one of those instances in sports where you know where you were when you saw it. I can still see, Ryan Arcidiacono shoveling the ball to Jenkins, and I can still see Charles Barkley going like this in the background. I've just seen that clip so many times. I'll never get tired of seeing it. Not even because it's Villanova, just because I think the fact that, you win a national championship like that at the buzzer, it's just exactly what you grew up dreaming about as a kid playing basketball in your front yard. So.
Yep, all about that one shining moment, I guess. Matt, who else is on your list here?
So I have Loyola Chicago can't stop hitting buzzer beaters 2018. Yes, the original emergence of Sister Jean and her witch powers as a chaplain. Loyola Chicago entered the 2018 tournament as an 11 seed, and they were a popular first-round upset pick over 60 to Miami. Then they went on to advance all the way to the Final Four, but did it in truly incredible fashion. We've had Cinderella stories like this before, but never like the way Loyola Chicago did it. They hit a buzzer beater against Miami. 2 days later, they hit a last-second shot that bounced around the rim like a certain Kawhi Leonard shot that I will not talk about that still haunts me to this day. They beat a good Tennessee team in that game. In the Sweet 16, they hit a three with 5 seconds left to extend a 1-point lead to 4 and would beat 7-seed Nevada. They just had a knack for hitting these big shots at the end of the game. And the crazy thing is all 3 of those shots were hit by different players on the team. They didn't have a go-to guy. Their whole team was willing to be that clutch shot guy, and they all did it. Then in the Elite 8 matchup of Cinderellas against 9-seeded Kansas State, they actually won a game convincingly. And then in the Final Four, they lost a tough game to Michigan, but it was a run that we'll never forget, definitely.
It was definitely a run that we didn't see. I think I actually had them going to the Sweet 16, but Final Four, I was like, no way that's going to happen. But they did it. And I also had that on my list too. I also just wrote Sister Jean. The phenomenon of Sister Jean was some of the funniest things. Her in the stands cheering on the team. I don't know, man. It might have motivated them a little bit. It seemed like the players loved her. And Twitter, of course, absolutely loved her. And I don't know. Maybe we do see a part 2. Maybe she is the key to success here.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They have a tough matchup, not only the first round, but the next round as well. It'd be crazy if they did. I would seriously get Sister Jean tried for being a witch if she actually got them past the into the Sweet 16 this year. But Hunter, I'll let you go now because I've taken 2 of yours already, so I'll let you go for one.
She's a witch. Anyways, though, next on my list is going to be one that we didn't live through, but still one of the most iconic moments in college basketball history, and that's going to be the Christian Laettner shot in the Final Four against Kentucky. That was one of the craziest things. In case you don't remember it, Grant Hill, who did not have anyone guarding him on the inbound pass, full court, all the way to Christian Laettner, takes 2 dribbles, turns around, jumper, game over. Duke advances to the finals and then ends up winning it. That was obviously one of the most iconic moments in college basketball history. It capped off a great career from Christian Laettner, basically icing on the cake there, if you will. And, that I feel like, for one, it showed people maybe you should guard the inbounds passer more. It's almost like letting a quarterback dropping 8 in coverage and letting a quarterback just pick you apart. Grant Hill was able to get a very clean look to Christian Laettner, good clean pass, and he hit the shot as a result. So give Duke credit, of course. You put a Villanova one on your list. I had to put a buzzer beater for Duke on mine. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to live in infamy, and still to this day is still one of the biggest shots that we've seen in college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Christian Laettner, the Duke, I kind of knew you would have that, so I let you have that one. I didn't put that one on my list. I figured I would put other ones on my list because I knew you, as a Duke fan, you'd have that one. Christian Laettner, obviously one of the best this sport has ever seen in terms of college basketball. And it's so funny how, you brought up the fact that they never guard the inbounder anymore. And it seems like so many teams since that play have tried to recreate that instance where they try to chuck it down the floor and try to get to a guy with like no time left for a shot, and it never works anymore. It never works. And maybe it's because people just started going for the ball now. Maybe it's because they've started putting someone in the inbounder, but it just never works anymore. So it was truly like a once in a lifetime thing to see Christian Laettner do that on that incredible play.
Yeah, it really was. Like it's like I don't think you can recreate that if you tried it 100 more times. Like that is not only does he get the pass off, he catches it and makes the shot in one of the biggest stages in all of sports in the Final Four against Kentucky, a blue blood. You can't make the stuff up, Matt. That's still one of the craziest things, that you can ever see. And Duke's not in the tournament this year, so I have to feel good about myself somehow. But anyways, though, Matt, who else is on the list for you here?
So I have Butler's miracle runs in back-to-back tournaments. It's one thing to be a Cinderella story in one tournament, but to do it in back-to-back years, it's pretty crazy. Butler entered the 2010 tournament as a little-known 5 seed. He was a popular pick to be upset in the first round because no one took them seriously as the champions from the Horizon League at the time. They went all the way to the national championship where they matched up with a true Goliath in your Duke Blue Devils. Down to with a couple seconds remaining, Duke missed a free throw. Gordon Hayward got the ball and chucked a shot from around half court. The shot bounced off the backboard and nicked off the front of the rim ever so slightly, and Duke held on. I'm sure you remember that like it was yesterday. It was like a scene from a Disney movie where the protagonist should have won, but they didn't because of some life lesson or something. And then the next year, as an 8 seed, they again marched all the way to the national championship game. And this year might have been an even wilder journey because they won at the buzzer in the first round against Old Dominion. Then they beat 1-seeded Pitt by 1 in the second round. And then they beat Florida in overtime in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. They would go on to lose again in the national championship, this time to Kemba Walker's Connecticut Huskies, who were on a miracle run of their own. But those 2 runs was what got Brad Stevens into the NBA.
It did. Pretty ironic now that Kemba Walker plays for him. It's the guy who broke his heart, I guess. And they did not have Gordon Hayward for both those runs, only the first one. So the other one, they didn't even have Gordon Hayward. It wasn't like they had a lottery pick on their team. So Butler definitely, I still remember that shot to this day, Matt. I honestly thought it was going in. And I literally was like, I think for like a good 5 seconds, I was just like, oh my God, Duke won. Like I literally was stunned. I could not believe that shot didn't go in. And I was like, oh, they won. Oh my God. Because that was the first championship that I really saw as a Duke fan. I know they won in 2001, I believe. But I was way too young. I wasn't going to remember that. I didn't know what basketball was. So that was the first championship I experienced for Duke. Not even the first. Actually, never mind. I wasn't the first in general for my sports fandom. But yeah, shout out to Butler. They pulled off the impossible twice. Got to give them credit where it's due.
Absolutely. So Hunter, what's next on your list then?
Next on my list is going to be a bit similar, a Cinderella run. That's going to be Florida Gulf Coast. Now, this was the ultimate bracket buster. They beat Georgetown, a team that had Otto Porter on it. A lot of people picked them to even win the national championship. Nah, the Florida Gulf Coast beat them. And then they also beat San Diego State, a 7 seed in the second round. Ended up losing to Florida, though, in the Sweet 16. So the run was a little short. But it was a 15 seed beating a 2, and not one that we expected at all. It was one of the craziest runs that we've seen in the tournament. Florida Gulf Coast, obviously won their conference. They had all these unknown guys. They had all the shirts and stuff that we believe. And Florida, I just remember being in middle school and watching that game and how crazy it was. Definitely, really was probably maybe to this day, arguably the biggest upset we've seen, although maybe not anymore. But it was definitely a crazy run. Florida Gulf Coast, it really seemed like they just hit their stride at the right time and really just was the pure definition of a bracket buster.
Yeah, and it's what's crazy at that time for Florida Gulf Coast is at that time that it was only their 3rd or 4th year as a basketball program. That school didn't have a basketball program. They just added it. And the fact that they were able to be a 15 seed, even make the tournament was an accomplishment, but then to beat a Goliath like Georgetown in that first round. And then I think they even won their second round matchup maybe against San Diego State. I'm not sure.
They went to
did.
Sweet 16.
Yeah. So
15 seed.
yeah, that's crazy as a 15, and at that time, especially,
I don't think it's been done since.
yeah, 15 seed is
It's the only
just,
time it happened.
yeah. So an incredible run. And, the main thing I remember about them was the fact that they dunked everything. They alley-ooped everything. It was
Dunk City.
incredible to watch. It was awesome. And that first round, those first 2 games they played was in Philly. So I remember that even more because it was at the Wells Fargo Center there. Crazy time. And I remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what else on your list here, Matt?
So this is going to be one that maybe a lot of people don't remember. So this is also from the 2016 tournament, but it was a second round match between Northern Iowa and Texas A&M.
Oh, I remember this game. Yep.
Yeah. So one of the most forgotten great moments of March Madness. Right after Northern Iowa had just beaten Texas on a half-court buzzer beater, which could have been one of the moments on my list as well because it was a great shot. In this game, Northern Iowa held a 12-point lead with just 44 seconds to go. In other words, this game was over, like completely over. Any other basketball game in this game is over. Wrong. The Aggies went on a ridiculous 14-2 run in just 35 seconds that included 3 steals in the backcourt, which is ridiculous in its own. A 5-second violation on Northern Iowa, and one from the Caruso, because Alex Caruso was on that Texas A&M team. The most incredible steal was the final one, as they got a Northern Iowa player trapped in a corner along the baseline. Somehow didn't foul him for whatever reason. I still don't know why they didn't foul him to this day. And then the player literally just bounced the ball right to an Aggie who laid it up to tie the game. Texas A&M would win the game in overtime. And, this is tough because I can't decide if this is the greatest comeback ever or the greatest choke ever, because so many things had to go right for Texas A&M to even be in that game. Northern Iowa just can't. It was just gave it away, it felt like. But either way, it was madness.
I think the answer is both, Matt. I think it was both the best comeback and the biggest choke. That's basically what it is. Any comeback, it requires 2 things. It requires one team to be playing out of its mind, and the other one to be playing terrible. And that's exactly what we saw here. Alex Caruso been a winner. You know this. This is why I always, give him his praises. The dude just makes winning plays out there. I'm telling you. And that was evident at Texas A&M. And then he ends up going to the Lakers and becomes the greatest player of all time. It's crazy how it works out like that.
Yeah, crazy. I could, dude, this is when he had more hair too, so I didn't even recognize him. And he was looking baggy in that jersey, but I didn't even know he was a part of that. So I was watching the highlights this morning. I was like, wait, Alex Caruso?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daniel House is on the team too. He plays for the Houston Rockets. So Texas A&M was a really good team that year. So was Northern Iowa. Both of them were really good that year. I remember that. Last but not least on my list is going to be, of course, when Virginia lost to UMBC. The first time we ever saw one. Not only did they lose to UMBC, they got smoked. It was not a close game at all. UMBC Twitter still to this day trolls Virginia, which I think is hilarious. And if Ohio beats Virginia, like we both think is going to happen, that for a fact UMBC is going to be instigating some stuff there. We it's going to happen. It was, we wanted to see UMBC, the dogs, quite literally the underdogs, go ahead and advance further in the tournament. They did not. They just survived and advanced one round and ended up losing. But it was definitely a crazy thing, something we never really thought was going to happen. And Virginia was, I think, the number 1 seed in the tournament that year. But give them credit because they said we're going to go from being, the biggest upset to being national champions, and they did. They ended up quite literally learning from that. So shout out to the Cavaliers, shout out to Tony Bennett. They had a great team the year after. I guess you can't make that stuff up. That was definitely the true definition of redemption.
Yeah, I think that's the only way Virginia was going to be able to redeem themselves if they won the championship the next year. It was their only option. They couldn't lose again. And, like you said, they were the number 1 overall seed, not even just the number 1 seed. They were the number 1 overall seed in the entire tournament, and they lost to UMBC, who had to win a game just to play them. I think they had to play in a play-in game just to play them.
Quite literally the worst team in the tournament be the best team.
Yeah, and
rankings.
It's just an instance of anybody can beat anybody on any given day in March. UMBC, a great story there. Obviously, they would go on to lose 2 days later to Kansas State, but they fought valiantly in that game and even held a lead late in that game in the second half, but they ended up losing by a couple points there to Kansas State. So the last one on my list, because I knew you would bring that one up, is kind of another game that people kind of forget about, and that's the Kansas-Memphis championship game in 2008.
Ooh.
This is another all-time choke job that was overshadowed by the great shot at the end. So Memphis, led by future number 1 pick and MVP Derrick Rose, held a 9-point lead with just 2:12 left. Once again, you think this game is basically over, barring a miracle. Turns out the only miracle the Kansas Jayhawks needed was Memphis forgetting how to shoot free throws. Down by 3 in the final seconds of the game, Mario Chalmers, who would later be known as the guy who shot too much on the Big Three heat, came off a screen and drilled a 3 to tie the game with 2 seconds left. A great shot. Kansas would go on to win the game and the championship in overtime, and it is known as one of the all-time great chokes in tournament history.
Yeah, and also Memphis got revoked that Final Four status too, because Derrick Rose had someone else take his SATs for him. So yeah, there's also that. So that game never actually happened, Matt. Okay, it doesn't count.
Yeah, it's like the Louisville 2013 championship. It never happened.
What champion? Who won 2013?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep,
I don't know.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know anything. Yeah, that definitely was a phenomenal game. I'm glad you brought that up. And just shows you Mario Chalmers, you can say what you want about him, but the dude's been a winner. He's a tough guy, always played both ends of the floor, knew his role. That went back since his Kansas Jayhawk roots, and also helped the Miami Heat win some championships too.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a great 3-point shooter in college and then for the Miami Heat there as well, but obviously annoyed LeBron a little bit, so he got out of there. But yeah.
He did call LeBron a certain explicit too on the bench. So said quit acting like a blank. You can figure out what that word was. So he wasn't afraid of anybody. So give credit to Mario Chalmers. He definitely took the brunt of a lot of those LeBron exchanges, but he could stand up for himself at least. So that's good. Anyways, though, that's going to wrap up episode 40 here. A Ball Don't Lie. Crazy to think we've done 40 freaking episodes of this podcast. It's crazy to see the longevity. And despite all the turmoil that happened with the pandemic and stuff like that, we were able to persevere, Matt. I guess the next goal would, I think, be 45. I'm excited to see it. We got March Madness and the NBA going on side by side. Going to be some college basketball, so we'll give you more coverage. NBA trade deadlines next week, too. So we'll bring it all here on one podcast.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about these next couple weeks for sure. Enjoy some basketball games this weekend. You earned it after not having it last year.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, not having a tournament last year, of course, sucked, but, it was what it was. Now we're back for the first time in 2 years. It's going to be a great one. I'm not going to be as stressed about it since Duke's not in it, but that's okay. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'll, watch as a fan, see my bracket be absolutely terrible. And, I guess both of ours, because we had pretty similar ones. And, we'll see all those crazy upsets, and we'll be here to cover it on Ball Don't Lie.
See ya.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.